So I thought it might be interesting to figure out how much time I spend doing certain jobs, certain work tasks, certain housework tasks, and get my husband Nick to do the same. Not only so I can see how much time I'm spending, but how much time he's spending on things, and then compare the two, because we actually both are fully self-employed in our businesses, and between the two of us also do all of the chores and housework. And while Nick is generally in charge of the domestic work and I'm generally in charge of the work, business work, so I'd say, I'm the manager of that and he's the manager of this. We have crossover, obviously, where I do some of the domestic stuff and he does some of the work stuff. And I was curious to see how that all actually balanced out. My suspicion is definitely that he's still doing more of the domestic work and that I'm still doing more of the business work, but we won't really know for sure until we actually test it. And I'm also curious about what I do with the rest of my time. I feel like I have a pretty clear idea that, the majority of my leisure time is usually exercise, reading fiction, catching up on news and other online information. But, how much time do I spend doing that and each of those things? So we both downloaded a tracker. The tracker we're using is called Simple Time Tracker. I wanted to find something that was simple and easy to use and without bells and whistles. It's just on the phone. You can open it up and you can make your own. So you make your own things, you give them an icon, you give them a color, and then all you need to do is simply tap on the icon that is representing whatever it is you're doing that minute. So it's not too difficult. We're currently actually in lockdown here in Queensland at the moment, so we're not really going anywhere. Not that we really go anywhere a lot anyway, except maybe to go to the post office to do the shopping. Usually we'd be going to the ocean to go swimming a few times a week, but we have a 10k radius in our lockdown and we can't get to the ocean because it's more than 10k's away. So we are very much stuck at home this week. And this is the week we were going to do this anyway, but it's pretty good timing because we get to see how much time we spend on different things at home. So that is our plan for this week. We're both going to be pretty diligent with it and track as much as we can of the time we spend. And it'll be really interesting to see how it all pans out. So obviously to make this work, we have a few simple rules. One of the rules is that you only track one activity at a time. This app does allow you to track multiple activities, so you can multitask, but we decided it was much easier if we just track the core activity that we're doing at a time. So for example, we usually eat dinner in front of the television. So for the period of time that we're actually eating, we're tracking eating. And then when we finish eating, we start tracking TV watching, okay, rather than tracking TV watching and eating at the same time. You could do it that way if you want to see exactly how much time you spend doing every activity, even with overlap, but we just wanted to make it simple, so we've gone with the prioritizing the main activity on the tracker. We also have slightly different activities, like we have some overlap obviously in the activities that we do, but we both set up our own activity tracker on here, activities that we've put on here. So at the end of the experiment, we will, compare I'll put all of the work hours together that I do versus all of the work hours together that he does. slash, all of the housework hours that he does, all of the housework hours that I do, and of course our leisure time as well, which will be pretty similar, I'm assuming. So I looked at a lot of apps for this, downloaded quite a few, and there's lots of fancy ones that allow you to sync across devices and things like that. And most of them you had to log into an account. I didn't need that. I always have my phone with me. I don't need to be able to sync this across devices. At least for a week, I can always have my phone with me, especially in lockdown. Hey, I'm at home. It's not like I'm going anywhere without my phone. So I think it was easier to go with a simple one. You don't need to log in or anything. It doesn't ask for any personal details. You just install it, set up your rules, set up all of your different activities, and boom, you're done and you're on your way. So you can see a bunch of mine on here, and you can see right now I'm doing video podcast work, and then all of the other things that I've chosen to track are on there as well. Okay, so the week is over. We have both tracked all of the time that we have spent during the week. I think we were both pretty religious about it, maybe me a little bit more than Nick, but he was pretty good. I'll show you my results so you can see basically what I spent my time on. So here you can see the little pie chart that breaks down all the time, and then below that you can see all of the activities and the time I spent during the week on those activities. I'll pull that up a little bit. It's really interesting to have it all broken down like this and be able to see, every single thing you've done for an entire week of time. Was I surprised by anything of my results or Nick's results? Not overly surprised. Obviously the thing I spent the most time doing was sleeping, unsurprisingly, which was 49 hours and 53 minutes, or 30% of my time. So that's kind of bang on, I'm getting enough sleep, which is fantastic. The next highest thing was reading fiction at 23 hours and 9 minutes. Now, considering I usually spend a few hours each evening reading a novel, and then on the weekend I definitely read a lot as well, that wasn't overly surprising to me. I spent 11 hours and 19 minutes either watching TV, watching YouTube, or listening to podcasts. So that is also listening to podcasts when I am not doing other things. So I usually listen to podcasts while I'm walking, and that would be classed as walking or exercise, because remember, we're only tracking our main activity. So I always go with the priority activity. The next one down was video and podcasting work, which was 10 hours and 46 minutes. Socializing was 8 hours, 30 minutes. Exercise, 8 hours, 10 minutes. And then it kept going on from there, and there were other, parts of my work here because I broke them down into separate areas. So overall, I spent something like 18 and a half hours at work during this week. I spent, I think it was about 7 hours all up of domestic chores, things like that, so cooking, cleaning, etc. Nick spent, I think, in that week around 15 hours on domestic chores, and he spent about 12 or so hours on work, like business work. Now, another interesting thing about doing this sort of tracking exercise is that it's not always the same every week, right? So for example, the week that we were doing this, I was in charge of taking care of the cats. We have what we call Cat Week. So we switch weeks as to who's responsible for feeding the cats, dealing with their litter, making sure they have enough water, all of that sort of stuff. And then also we had a slower week of jewellery sales, so Nick wasn't as busy in the studio than he normally would be. So he spent a few less hours working in the studio than he would normally. Another thing was on Sunday I made a Sunday roast, which took a couple of hours, which I don't normally do on a weekend, so that kind of bumped up my cooking time a little bit. So I think that's an important thing to remember when you do something like this, is that 1 week is a representative snapshot, but it's not necessarily the truth as it is all the time. So I think this would be really fun to actually repeat in the future. Also, of course, it was lockdown week, so our exercise was probably a bit lower than normal because we didn't get to swim. We also, the socializing I did was all remote socializing, so it was like talking on the phone or having a Zoom. I had like a Zoom party with a couple of my friends on the Friday night, or playing D&D on a Monday night, which we play online. So, thankfully, I still got that time in to socialize with my people. But yeah, it was really interesting. It was fascinating to have the fact confirmed that I spend more time reading than I do working. And that's really nice. Like I've reached the point in my life and my business that my business is set up and running smoothly. I have systems in place that I don't have to work 40 hours a week to continue my business and keep it running. Between Nick and I'd say on a normal week we work anywhere from 30 to 40 hours between the two of us to keep our businesses running, which is really lovely and sustainable, and we're incredibly lucky to be able to do that. And we've worked hard to build a business that allows us to do that, and it allows us to have so much free time to indulge in our preferred leisure activities and the things we love to do. Obviously we don't have children, so that shows how much leisure time we are able to have. If we had kids, I'm sure that would be incredibly different, but we don't. So we do have a lot of time. Now, since recording this right now, it's actually been a couple of weeks since we did this, just because I'm up to my next batch of recording, because I batch record my videos for my channel. And the weeks in between have definitely had differences in there. For example, in the last 2 weeks, I've picked up a new hobby. So I've been spending time working on that new hobby in the evenings a lot of the time, which has, cut into my reading time, but it's still leisure time. So if you want to kind of look at the large picture of work time, leisure time, sleeping time, housework time, socializing, sort of those big domains of life and what goes into those domains and how much time you spend in them, it definitely shows that we are incredibly fortunate to have a lot of free time to do things apart from work, even though we love the work we do, and we're really I'm really happy that we have been able to create a life where we do work we love. We also have a lot of free time, and it also actually prompted me, when I saw how much time I was spending just reading, which I've always been a massive bookworm. Like since I was a little kid, that's what I spend. If I had my way, I'd probably spend my entire life reading novels because it's just what I absolutely adore. But it also made me think, hey, I really do have a lot of spare time to do other fun stuff, and that's kind of one of the things that prompted me to start this new hobby that I have, which I will tell you about in another video. So it was a really interesting experiment. And looking at the equity balance between Nick and I, that again wasn't really a surprise. We have been doing this for a long time now, and it was pretty clear, and it is pretty clear, who spends more time doing what. And like last week, we had, because it's summer in America especially, it's a slow time for sales, jewellery sales, and so Nick had a lot of extra time that he'd normally spend down in the studio, and he did a bunch of yard work. He cut down some branches and did a whole bunch of outside work that he normally, doesn't have time to get to. And he did some, DIY around the house. Like we had some lights fitted recently, and the electrician was not the greatest, and he drilled into the wrong part of the ceiling, so it needed to be, plastered up and fixed up, so he did that. So yeah, and I think when you look at it, it shows that, overall, if you combine all of the work that we have in our lives, we have a really nice balance there, which is great. And it means that both of us feel like everything's fair and equitable in our work-life relationship, which I think is really important for harmony in a marriage and a business relationship. For those of you who are curious about how Nick and I do manage all of that, I do have an old podcast episode. I'll put a link to it in the description below, where I actually brought him on the podcast and interviewed him, and we talked about all of that stuff. He doesn't really like to be on video, So I don't know that I'll ever get him here on the channel, but hey, if you'd love to have me interview him on the channel and us to talk about any of that stuff, let me know in the comments below and maybe I can convince him. So if enough of you ask to hear from him, and if you have any questions for him as well as the partner of someone running a business, then leave them below and I can always ask him and he can answer those. And again, for me, if you have any questions about what it's like to work full-time with your spouse, working from home, then don't hesitate to ask, but go check out that podcast episode. We answer a lot of those questions in that episode as well. So yeah, I'd strongly recommend, that you do this. If you have any uncertainty or lack of clarity personally about how much time you're spending on your work and other things in your life, and also maybe doing this with your partner as well, so you do get a sense of who's doing what and what the fairness is of the work distribution in your family. But yeah, especially for your business, because you might be over or underestimating how much time you're actually spending on your business and also where you're spending your time. So definitely break it down into those different categories. It's going to be different for everybody, but like making time, admin time, email and messaging time, social media time. Those are the main ones I would recommend you break it down into, and just do it for a week and see what your results are. You might find that you're surprised at what you see. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting and helpful and useful, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. It was actually really fun to do. It wasn't as tedious as I thought it was. This app is really, really good. So Simple Time Tracker. Again, I'll write the name down in the description below so you can try it and you can set up all your own things. And it's as simple as just having your phone with you and pressing a button every time you change activity. You don't have to write anything down or anything like that. And let's be honest, most of us have our phones with us pretty much all the time anyway, especially if we're at home all the time. It's pretty easy to do. So I strongly encourage you to try this for a week and see what results you get. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you do, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back again soon with another video about how to have a thriving, profitable handmade business and how to be healthy and happy while you work from home. Bye for now.